Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Paranormal Paradigm podcast. Hope you're all keeping well. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode. Today's episode is going to be quite an interesting one. I had a guy contact me who's a regular listener to the show, and he wanted to talk to me about some experiences that he had, I believe as a child, as a youngster, but I believe they've kind of carried on throughout his life, and we'll get into that during the interview. A really interesting story about a ghost train, which fascinates me because, of course, people often think of a spirit or a ghost being that of a disembodied spirit. It had to belong to something that was living, something that was biological, such as an animal or a human. So to have a train, a mechanical object, to be projecting itself as a spirit is a really interesting concept, and we'll probably discuss some theories as to how that could possibly happen. So it should be a good show. But yeah, I kind of want to have another quick plug for the recent festival that happened, and the recent festival for the Festival of the Unexplained. And it was in aid of CALM, which is the Campaign Against Living Miserably. And I believe they raised around about £1,500. Maybe a little bit more for a great cause, really, and particularly with what's going on at the moment, a lot of people are living miserably. And so, yeah, if you head over to YouTube and search for Festival of the Unexplained, you'll be able to see all of the great shows, presentations, and interviews that were done and conducted throughout that weekend. It was a 48-hour extravaganza, non-stop, from 7 p.m. on the Friday night until 7 p.m. on the Sunday night. It was non-stop. It went through the night with people in America coming on to do their shows while people in the UK slept. So there's a host of shows over there on that YouTube channel that you can go and watch, and it should give you should keep you going, really, regarding paranormal, and you should be able to get a good fix over there of all the shows that are going on. So hopefully you enjoy that. But yeah, episode 30, we've come a long way. I would never have dreamed of getting to episode 30, to be honest. Probably could have been a lot more if I'd have stuck to my original strict schedule of putting one out every 2 weeks. But as you know, life gets in the way. So I try and just do them when I can now. But we are getting slightly more regular than we have been. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy today's show. We've got Marcus coming on to discuss his ghost train and his other experiences as well. So it should be good. And I hope you enjoy it. And it's my pleasure to welcome Marcus to the show. Marcus, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Kieran?
I'm very good, thank you. Listen, it's really great that you've come on. It was quite short notice, actually, to get you onto the show. But you contacted me about your experiences, and I had to get you on. I made a statement about 3 episodes ago about how I was going to start focusing on, the real people having real experiences, and God, did you have a good experience by the sounds of it?
Yeah.
So let's not waste any time. Let's get you in there. So you grew up in Gloucestershire, which, for the people who aren't familiar with England, everyone has heard of Gloucestershire. It is kind of the spiritual county of England, I'd like to think.
Mm. Yeah, it's very close to very well-known towns and cities. It's sort of half an hour drive to Oxford, and you've got Cirencester nearby, and then about an hour to Bristol, where I am now.
Great. And you grew up at, was it Lochland?
Lechlade.
Lechlade, okay, right. And you had a big nature reserve that backed onto your house. I mean, that would have been lovely to have something like that so close to your house.
It is amazing, yeah. Yeah, growing up, because I lived in the same house in Lechlade for 18 years, yeah. And then
wow, okay.
He's been there for the last 30 years.
Okay, and your experiences have really kind of centred around this one particular area, shall we say? Yeah,
definitely growing up. There's a few experiences there, and actually, at the time they were incredibly real, and then over the years I've not even thought about them because they've seemed kind of ridiculous, and it's only as I've got older and sort of got into spiritualism and kind of the paranormal, I've started to look back at these events that occurred when I was a kid and wondered if there's something to them, or if it is just a kid's making up stuff.
I mean, what fascinates me about that is how many people have paranormal experiences, shall we say, or spiritual experiences, and not really be into it, and therefore they don't recognise them for what they actually are. And it takes you, as you said, kind of getting into the whole field of the paranormal, and then you look back and you think, you look at it through different eyes almost. And I wonder how many people out there are like that. They have these experiences but just don't think anything of them.
Yeah, definitely.
There must be hundreds of, if not thousands of people like that. So do you want to talk us through your we'll start off with the biggie, the ghost train. And everyone thinks of a ghost train at a fair, like mechanical sounds and little monsters jumping out of you, but your story is slightly different. And it's a fascinating story, so please just talk us through it.
Yeah, so this will be the first time I've ever talked about this kind of publicly. I've only told a couple of friends, very few, sort of best mate or housemate or something.
Yeah.
And it's sort of your podcast series that's inspired me to talk about it. And
right. That's nice.
Explanation was, it seems like the right place to sort of talk about this.
Brilliant. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's because of the nature of it. For me, it's very real, and as I said, I don't really care if people don't believe it. I completely understand people not believing it, but I know what happened, and the fact that there's a physical object involved is what makes it kind of surreal. And non-believers would, as soon as I mention a train, would be like, okay, I'm not on board with this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll talk you through it. So the nature reserve backed onto almost like the back of my garden. So it's my garden, a fence, farmer's field, and then the next field was this massive nature reserve. Amazing place to grow up. I could jump over the fence, walk through the farmer's field, which wasn't really allowed to do, but it was a lot quicker going around. So I used to play there all the time, and particularly in summer holidays, I was there most days when I wasn't at school. And sometimes I went down with my friends and my siblings, but a lot of the time I just go there on my own as well. And yeah, just one day, which started out like a normal day, I went down. I took my dog. I'd cycled my push bike with the dog sort of walking beside me.
Yeah.
There was a bridge that I always used to play near or under it, and it's underneath was just grass. It is like there are cars going over it. It's like a little B road. So yeah, perfectly safe to be underneath it, and it was there, or other places within the nature reserve. It was quite a big lake in the middle. But yeah, one day I think I had a kind of a funny feeling. I remember not going right up to the bridge from the start, and normally I'd have no problem. I'd just go straight up to it.
Yeah.
I was a bit wary of it this day, and as I looked underneath the bridge, I saw just a perfectly sort of spherical white light right underneath it, and I could see that the sun was elsewhere. It was kind of somewhere over higher and to the right, so that ruled that out. And then I sort of could hear a really faint sound of what sounded like a train, but very faint. And then I was fixated on this light. And as this light sort of, it began to sort of seem to get closer, because I only knew it was getting closer because it was enlarging. And as it started to get larger from a kind of very small circle, the noises started to get louder as well. So they were, as the light got lighter, came towards me, the sounds got louder and louder. So what I knew was something was heading towards me.
Yeah.
And as I got a bit closer, it was clearly train noises. Being a kid, you don't have those receptors to shut off to this stuff. So this is what was happening. There was a train. And as it got closer and closer, my dog was already terrified, turned around, started to run away. I started to get terrified as well. So I got onto my push bike and just turned it around and just cycled as quickly as I could away from this train thing. And as I was cycling away, absolutely terrified, it actually caught up with me, sort of whooshed past me to my left. I tried not to look at it, but I did. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see what it was. I saw the entire length of the train go past me, and in it where it was full, it was rammed of people that were in sort of maybe 50s, 40s sort of clothing, old kind of formal sort of looking suit jacket sort of thing, and with lots of caps, flat caps, and I seem to remember a lot of smoke. I think they were smoking. Some were smoking cigars and things like this, and they were talking as well. So I had the train sounds, and I had I saw like all the detail of the train. All these people, I could see what they were wearing. I could see them talking to each other, leaning out the windows, arms sort of hanging out the windows, holding cigars and things. And I just cycled as fast as I could, straight out the nature reserve, and cycled home. Dog had already got home. I burst through my front door and just broke down into tears because it was just such a surreal and terrifying experience.
Yep.
I didn't know if people were trying to hurt me, if they were trying to. It felt like at the time they were trying to scare me. But now thinking about it, I don't know if they were or they were just talking to each other. But it felt very much at the time like they were there to torment me. And so as I got home, my dad and one of my brothers found me just sort of in tears in my kitchen, and asked me what happened. So I explained I've just seen this ghost train in the nature reserve, and rather than sort of them just saying, "Oh, I'm sure it's just in your head," sort of thing, which probably would have comforted me a bit at the time.
Yeah.
My dad actually said, "That's really weird, because there was a train there in the 60s. There was a train where you were." So obviously that just terrified me even more, because it just confirmed what I had seen to be true. It wasn't in my head. I had no idea that there was a train there. This was the first I'd heard of it. So yeah, very shocking experience. The only sort of other thing to verify it is the dog. Asked the dog really, but the dog was clearly scared and he ran off before me. So it was very real experience.
Wow. I haven't. Normally, I'm kind of interrupting and asking questions, but I thought, this is the first time you've told this publicly, and I'll let you tell it fully. But if I was listening to this now, if I was one of the listeners, my head would be filled with questions off the back of this kind of experience. And luckily, I'm in a position where I can ask those questions. Really, there's so many questions. The train itself, when it went past you, and you said you could see the people within the train, did you feel the train? Obviously the breeze that it would have given off as it was going past you.
I remember a sort of whooshing sort of sensation. I can't remember feeling it, but I remember clearly the sound as it went past me. It had the noise of, if a train was to drive past you quickly, that sort of sound of it passing. I don't remember feeling it physically. Maybe I guess all I would have felt would be like the wind sort of blowing against my clothes, because it did just sort of seem to just sort of scrape past me. But I don't remember that actually feeling it physically.
Okay.
The sound.
And the people that were on the train, obviously you said they were talking with each other. You could hear that kind of hubbub of the conversation. You could even see the smoke of their cigars. You could see the flat caps that they were wearing. Did any of them acknowledge you?
I felt at the time that they did.
Yeah.
Like I said, I felt like they might have been sort of mocking, trying to freak me out, and I felt like they knew what was going on, that I was a scared kid, and they were there to sort of make me feel scared because they were ghosts, and they thought, oh, let's play with this kid. That's how it felt at the time. I don't know now, kind of a part of me feels like that they wouldn't have recognized me whatsoever, and it's just a repeat of something that happens, and not many people can see it, but they would always have done that whether or not I was there. This is kind of what I'm feeling now.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And you talk about it kind of happens all the time, but not many people can see it. Have you ever, throughout the years now, looked to see if there are other reports of people witnessing the same thing that you did?
Only since getting this podcast interview.
Okay, yeah.
And I've done my own investigations. So, yeah, I thought I'd message it's just a Facebook group called Lechlade on Thames, and it's just people that live in the area, just like local businesses and general chit chat on there. So I thought I would just post on there just saying if anyone's got any paranormal experiences they'd like to share with me, send me a private message. It'd be great to talk about it. I didn't want people to just post on the group.
Yeah.
Because people's responses might not be that positive.
Yeah.
And yeah, several people messaged me, and the first person that messaged me listed big list of things that she's seen. The very first one she said was train sounds, train noises.
Wow.
First,
and that must have blown you away a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't want to at all mention anything to influence people, so I didn't say anything about my experience. But that's the very first thing on this big list of things, of occurrences, was train sounds. And she said, I still hear them now. She said, so,
wow.
Yeah, that really made an impact on me for sure.
And you said while you were telling your experience, you mentioned something that was very, it really stood out to me. And that was, as a child, you were witnessing something and you hadn't basically had the restraints of society put upon you, the perception that society wants you to have. And therefore you were just living in the moment and you were just witnessing what was actually going on in front of you. And you can't help but think that if you were older, or if you were a staunch non-believer in the paranormal, you would have ignored what was going on and come up with a different excuse or try to pass it off as something else. But as the innocence of a child really is, it is what it is. It was a train filled with people coming past you, not on a train track because it's essentially not there anymore, yet somehow riding past you.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of feel like we adults have these perception filters, and your brain is sort of trained a certain way, like you said, external influences and things, and and people that are open to it, like ourselves, we have these experiences.
Yeah.
But we are open to it, and then there are other people that are completely shut off to that. Not only can they not comprehend it or just not think about it, I wonder if they actually see it at all. It's something I've been thinking about recently, because lots of people that are very anti-paranormal don't believe it at all. You say, but have you never had any sort of paranormal experience at all? And they always say, no, nothing at all.
I have to agree with you there, but I do often say that most people, it is this society, and without turning this show into too much of a psychological kind of debate, it is society, and it is the perception that we put on them. I have a small boy, and if I was to catch him kind of seemingly talking to something that wasn't there, personally, I would kind of encourage that, because it either shows strong imagination skills, or he's talking to something that he can see.
Yeah. And
as adults, we often tell the children, that's not real, don't be stupid, it doesn't exist, you're imagining it. And what those children do then is they shut that down, and so they see it less, and then they see it less, and then eventually they ignore it, because they know that if they act upon it, their mum or their dad is going to scold them for it. Yeah. And eventually they just stop seeing it. So it's almost like we're all born to be susceptible to it, but society shuts it down. And we live in a society where it's called the paranormal because it's not accepted as normal.
Yeah.
And, to you, seeing that train on that day was perfectly normal. It was almost like that train should have been there. It should have been there at that time. But unfortunately, as the society that we live in will mock you. And this is the very reason you're only just telling your experience.
Yeah.
And I think I keep kind of talking about this on shows recently, but I think it's a really important point to make, that the society that we live in shouldn't be structured like that. And it's unfortunate that it is. And it's great when people like yourself can come out and tell your experiences, because to you, it was so very real.
Yeah.
it's a shame because there are so many people out there in your position that won't come out and talk about these kind of things, and it kind of eats up at them. And I don't know, obviously you're a listener to the show. I don't know if you heard the show I did with a guy called Dwayne who told his experiences, but felt he had to hide his name,
right?
Which was fine. But, you know, the fact that he feels he has to do that is such a sad thing.
Yeah.
So to get back to your whole experience, you've obviously done some research on the train. Your dad told you that there was a train that ran through there.
Yeah.
When you could see it coming and it had gone past you and you kind of got home and the whole thing is done and dusted, did it ever cross your mind that I'm a kid, it was an imagination, it was as real as it was, it just never happened?
No, not at all. For me, it's been that is what I saw. My brain didn't make it up. Even though I've not really talked about it, at no point have I thought, oh, maybe I just made that up. No, it's been completely real for me, and it was confirmed. You know, you don't often get a story like that or a sighting like that actually confirmed. So that's what's kind of significant about this, I guess. But what's it took me years. It took me till I was like 25, maybe 26 to actually look up pictures of the old stations and the old tracks, because it impacted my life that much. It didn't impact my everyday life, but thinking about this story would always scare me. It still does now. So I built up sort of the courage to actually Google it. And what I found was it was as scary as I thought it would be to see these actual photos. And they're, black and white old photos, big Lechlade sign, big trains. The most shocking one was what I found. So I'd seen some of these pictures and information about it, but actually when I posted my story on the Facebook group that you picked up on, I found a picture to post up on there. And that was the first time I noticed people hanging out the trains in flat caps.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, this is actually a picture of what I saw. And that's on the Paranormal SO page. And the bridge that's in that picture is the bridge I played under. I didn't even realize, because when I saw this train, I didn't realize that the actual route was under that bridge. I thought there was tracks nearby. There was a train in that vicinity, but I actually saw it go along a train line, which is exactly where the train line is if you look at those old pictures. So all of this just confirms it more. Every time I look into it, it confirms it more.
Yeah, and of course, it's always that you kind of play that reverse psychology, because as a child, you had absolutely, I assume, and I'm guessing this, but no interest really in trains or the history of the town, or you wouldn't have known that there was a train track there. As an adult, if you were to experience it now and to see the train where it was, you might be able to put it down to, maybe it is your imagination, because there's a train track there and there was a train that went in that exact route. But as a child, how could you even guess that?
Yeah, and that's why it's significant, is because I had no idea. And there were so I spoke to friends about this recently. I've sort of shown them, because I wanted to clarify, were there actually train tracks that were overgrown, and I just don't remember that part, and my head put it together because there was old train tracks and I knew there was stuff there. And my brother was like, yeah, I think there were. And then he said, actually, no, I think there was just mounds of grass. But it was obvious there used to be train tracks there.
Yeah.
For my brother, who's 5 years older than me, it was obvious that there used to have been tracks there because of slightly risen bits of grass. But that wasn't the case for me. I didn't know why there was raised bits of grass. And actually, I spoke to my dad and said, were there train tracks at any point since I lived there? Because that would kind of potentially change my experience slightly. Mm-hmm. But he said, no, they were gone by the 60s. So they were never there when we lived there. And he didn't really know. It wasn't talked about until I had this experience. And then that's when it came to light. Oh, yeah, there was this train track through Lechlade.
Right. And the people that you saw, obviously with the flat caps and stuff, Did you ever get a sense of an era? What was it the 1900s, the 40s, the 50s?
Yeah, 40s, 50s. I think it didn't seem really like 1900s sort of, or before that. I think it was probably 40s, 50s, based on the clothing, and it would seem old anyway because of, I mean, the colours was just sort of shades of grey, white smoke, and sort of grey shades. There was no other colour to what I saw.
Well, that's interesting as well, of course, because it probably would have been like a black train or a red train or a combination of different colours. And the people on the train, did they have that kind of grey colour as well?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But
that's interesting.
See their clothes. I could see. I don't know where I remember so clearly. Just the so many of them smoking cigarettes and cigars and things. But that was definitely what happened.
And the dog, of course, the dog is a huge backup as well as to what happened. The fact that he's clearly sent something and he's shot off. Yeah. And quite often it happens where the dog would act strangely, but the human doesn't pick up on what they're seeing. Mm. And we, again, just like we do with children, we brush it off. Oh, it's nothing. He's just having a crazy moment. But the fact that you were able to share that with the dog, a shared experience almost, must help clarify it for you as well.
Yeah, it does. And when I tell this experience to people, I will always mention the dog because it is a big part.
Yeah.
He saw what was going on. He reacted before me. That just clarifies that it wasn't just me. And even if, and people would say, oh yeah, it's just, vivid imagination. It's like, well, if it is, then the imagination is absolutely incredible because what I saw was incredibly real.
Not only that, but you and the dog must have both been imagining the same thing, and therefore, if it's not a paranormal experience, it's some kind of psychotic experience that you're having, or some kind of shared with your pet, which is even more interesting than a paranormal experience, really.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I often talk about that with spirit boards. Like if it isn't a spirit interacting with you when you're moving the glass, then it must be some kind of telekinesis that's going on. You're all telling each other subconsciously what to spell. So sometimes people often mock the paranormal, but sometimes the alternative is just as fascinating as if it was a paranormal experience, really. Yeah. So the train is obviously a big, big part of your experiences. And we'll come back to it in a minute when we talk about the theories and what it could possibly have been. But you've obviously had more experiences in that area since then. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah. So these are the ones that I writ off as purely childish imagination until very recently. And also I feel like there's something to the fact that I'm wanting to talk about this now, because I wouldn't, a few years ago, there's no way I would have seen that because they just sound ridiculous. But now when I think about it, and I feel like I should go back to that nature reserve, maybe there's something to it. And one of them was just, so I played in this nature reserve all the time. But one day I found an area. I went through some trees I hadn't gone through before, and there's 2 trees where the tree trunks were like bent right over, sort of curved right angles, and I could sit on them sort of like a hammock. And really vibrant green moss on them, really soft, and went beyond those trees and then just found this amazing lush green, beautiful grass, flowers, fruit trees like citrus trees, and and butterflies and things. And I just remember thinking, wow, how have I never found this place before? It's absolutely amazing. And so I spent a few hours there. Just amazed I hadn't found this part of the nature reserve that I went to every day. Had this amazing time there, went home, and then was excited to go back the next day. And went back the next day and just spent hours looking for this place. And I was like, I'm absolutely certain I'm in the same spot. And I looked around until it got dark and had to go home. And I continued to look every day and never found it again. And so that place, it just didn't really exist, but it was so real that I searched for it. I searched for it for weeks afterwards, and that's what makes me think maybe there's something to it, because it wasn't like I went back one day and realized, oh, I just imagined it. I remember going back just for weeks in a row every day to try and find it. So that's quite strange as well.
That's very strange. I mean, it almost sounds like we had a guy on here. I don't know if you've listened to the interview with Neil, and he was very good with this. He talks about fairies and kind of like these mystical, mythical lands. And it's almost like you stumbled upon that the way you've described it. I almost imagine fairies flying around with little kind of gnomes dotting around in between the grass. Did you feel like it was like a little bit of heaven almost that you'd found, that it was just for you? Nobody else would be able to bother you there.
Yeah, I definitely felt like no one else is going to find it. It was a very special place. It did feel magical. I didn't see anything that you wouldn't see in some sort of tropical environment, like the fairies and things like that. Yeah, it was just, I just had the best time. And for probably 2 or 3 hours, because I used to be able to just go and play in there until it got dark, and then I'd just because this is probably, I don't know what age exactly, but between 7 and 12 or something like that. So it was just really significant. I'd never found the space before. And I didn't have any fear that, I guess I felt like no one's seen this place before. So it was that excitement as well. Like, I found this magical place. But yeah, I kind of just dismissed that as an adult as just something that didn't really happen. But the fact it's had an impact on me, and I've never really forgotten it, and I know that I'm searching for it. That's what makes it seem like there's more to it.
Yeah, definitely.
I haven't really heard of places being kind of like spiritual places, and so I don't know much about that sort of thing, and I don't know what I experienced there. But I guess there's something to that as well.
I think. I mean, obviously, people just talk about places where ley lines will run through them, and energy gathers and almost creates like a vortex or a portal of energy. It seems to me that you found one there, and not just you. You talk about the lady that told you that she can hear the train sounds as well. Obviously, the dog had the experiences that you're going to bring us onto in a second. It's obviously a vast bundle of energy that's existing there, and you're very lucky to have found it. And maybe you can tune into it better than other people around, and that's why it's kind of. I talk a lot about frequencies, and it's almost like it's a frequency that's attracting you. You're both on the same frequency level, really.
Yeah, it's the same. And it's because it's in that place that makes me feel like there's something to it. So if it was somewhere else, I would have written it off now as didn't really happen. But because it's there, and I feel like I have this connection to that place, so that's what makes me think maybe there is something to these experiences. But
yeah. And the one you pointed out was a talking horse.
Yeah,
I'm desperate to hear about this one.
This was simply, I just used to think that I was going into the nature reserve, spending hours talking to this horse, and I'd tell everyone about it, and tell my parents and my brothers about my day, and obviously they would just laugh at me and just say, it's funny sort of joke thing. But I remember all my when I made cards for people, I'd handmade Christmas cards, birthday cards, always drew this horse. And it was a big thing, and there's pictures on the walls that I drew for my parents, and everyone just sort of ridiculed it. But my grandma, who I feel definitely some sort of spiritual connection with, she was the only one who ever just said to me, "Oh, tell me about the horse then. Where is he? What's he called?"
Yeah.
And no one had ever said that to me before. So that was really amazing. And then we would chat about it, and then I would always draw her pictures of it, and just that really set this bond between me and my grandma. And and when I think about it now, because I wonder, I don't think there was actually a horse. It wasn't like there was a normal horse and I thought I could speak to it. And I don't think it was stood there talking English, mouth moving sort of thing. But when I think about it now, that I was telepathically communicating with I saw a horse, but it wasn't there. But I think the important thing about that is that it was the telepathic communication, which seems to resonate with lots of spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
And it sounds ridiculous, but I'm learning more and more that there are instances of pets, animals in the spirit world. So I've always thought of this was just something I made up. But the fact it was such a big thing that I talked about, and when people said, you're making it up as a child, which anyone would, obviously, I would get so upset. I'd break down and be really upset about it. The fact that they didn't believe me, and I was just saying, I'm absolutely not lying to you. This is completely true. But obviously, everyone's like, no, it's obviously not true.
What kind of conversations would you have with the horse?
That's what I can't remember, and I wish I could remember the context of them. But I feel like it was just nice, sort of comforting conversation.
Yeah.
There was a bit of trouble at home, and like I think I just felt like I could talk freely with this.
Now that's interesting. Because my next question was there something going on in your life at that time that would have led to you potentially creating this kind of this person or this horse? People will create people, or they will create whatever it is that comforts them. Do you think there's part of that in there, or do you genuinely believe that it was a paranormal, spiritual experience?
I don't know. I only think that I only think it's worth mentioning because it all happened in this same place, and I do feel a spiritual connection to this place. If it was a standalone thing, I would definitely just not even bring it up. I'd feel it was completely irrelevant. But there was a bit of problems, I guess, with my relationship with my mum.
Yeah.
And there was something sort of missing from that relationship. So I guess I felt that love from this horse, and could talk freely to it. So that is probably part of it.
And have you ever considered that the horse was potentially a spirit guide? I mean, obviously now the more you're looking into this, the more you're opening up to what the spiritual world is and the paranormal world. Obviously, we have things such as spirit guides. Mm. Do you think that it was potentially that setting you on like a certain path in your life? Yeah,
I do feel it's a spiritual entity that I was communicating with telepathically, and perhaps because the ghost train experience was before this, so I was scared of ghosts. So spirit to present itself to me would be pretty terrifying for me. So perhaps, there's something to it. It showed itself to be something I was comfortable with.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's something to it.
I'd be inclined to go to follow that theory. If obviously I can't speak for you, I haven't had the experience, but if I had to kind of put it on paper what I thought, I would have to say that it was some kind of spirit guide or something that's close to you, even now probably, that was showing itself as a horse in order to comfort you, and in order to make you feel comfortable enough to talk and to get your worries out and your the stress and the problems that you were dealing with.
Yeah.
And if people mock it and if people say, nah, that's a load of rubbish, well, fine. But even if it wasn't spiritual or paranormal, at least it gave you a good platform to feel comfortable. And that's all that matters. I often talk about being such a personal thing, the paranormal. And it is what it is. If you experience a horse that is comforting you and making you feel better about yourself, to hell with whatever people think. It's your personal experience. Let's touch a little bit now on theories, because I know you've kind of brought them in a little bit throughout what you've said. The train one. The train is fascinating because, as we mentioned at the top of the show, how can a mechanical object portray itself as a spirit? It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But is it? Is it impossible?
Part of me not talking to people that much about it is that element of it. Like, people see ghosts all the time. They may see spirits, but no one talks about ghost trains because it's just a classic, thing you get at a fun fair. It's just, if someone's gonna not believe you, they're not going to believe that. So, but it was from listening really to your podcast, and that made me think, and other people's paranormal experiences, is people often say, "Oh yeah, I saw an old woman in a grey dress," or "I saw soldiers walking with rifles." And there's these details. People are seeing specific clothing. They're seeing specific items. So I think that started to make me think, well, if you can see clearly a rifle, that doesn't have a soul, why would that be in the spirit world? But that's what's presented to you. I don't know how, but what I saw, I feel, was just on a bigger level to that. I saw this physical metal object. It was obviously translucent and grey and white, but yeah, it was there. It wasn't just people floating. It was the train was very, very much real.
I think I'd like to discuss some theories with you. And for me, you've obviously listened to the podcast, so you probably know what I'm about to say, but everything ultimately is a frequency. It's a bunch of atoms vibrating to a particular frequency and giving itself energy. That's all we are now. The headphones that are in my ears are simply a bunch of atoms vibrating to a particular frequency in order to exist how it does. Yeah. If we were to alter that frequency, if we were to break down those atoms, it will change shape. Mm-hmm. A bit like cymetics, where they have the sand on the table, they change the frequency, and the sand changes like the way it's shaped. So really, the train is just the same. The train is a bunch of particles vibrating to a particular frequency.
Yeah.
So the only difference between that and us is that we have consciousness. Mm-hmm. We are self-aware. But who are we to say that these objects aren't self-aware? And that's really out there. But who's to say that it isn't? So that's one potential theory. But we can take that then and bring it into the whole time slip theory. And what you experienced there was a time slip. Because if time isn't linear and everything that exists and ever has happened and ever will happen is all happening right now, then that train will be going through, as you said, it happens all the time. It's going to be going through on the hour, every hour, looping. And you have had that experience millions of times in almost alternate timelines, alternate realities. And maybe you just slipped through that.
Yeah. I was wondering if maybe the people on the train had noticed me and they were just as shocked to see this colourful person, this being that was from the future, or were they not aware of me at all? Or if it's all happening at the same time, potentially they could have been aware of me.
Yeah.
Do you hear a spirit? Obviously, spirits I now would class different to ghosts, but ghosts also react to people. So even if it is just this repetitive, almost repeating video type stored memory, maybe they could still see me.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that's got making me think about it being a time slip possibility, almost like a replay, as you say, is that it was still going where the tracks should have been. Just like people see spirits, they will walk through a wall, and it's because in their reality, the wall wasn't there, so they're just walking through a doorway, maybe. And that train was on its track. Despite the fact that there wasn't a track, it was on its tracks in its own timeline, in its own reality. And that's what makes me think that it is almost this replay, this time slip type theory. But it really kind of fascinates me because what you just said there, this whole, did they look at you and then go home to their families and say, I saw a really strange thing today? Mm-hmm. We often say people will see someone walk through their house. Does that person then go where they're going and say, I've just seen someone weird in my house, their house?
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible? Because when the problem is, I know a lot of people that have not nowhere near as similar as your experiences, but paranormal experiences. And when you start to talk about the potential theories surrounding it, they start to kind of almost like saying, no, that's crazy. That's really out there. And I'm like, but hang on a minute. For example, in your experience, you've just witnessed a ghost train. You can't get any weirder than that. So why are people not willing to accept the possibility that it was a time slip?
Yeah.
If you're willing to accept you've seen a ghost train, you have to be open to the fact that there was a time slip.
Yeah, it's definitely a consideration. I'd say I have been thinking that it could have actually been happening at that time. I wonder what would happen if I hadn't have moved out the way. It would have gone through me. Then I would have felt it, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's not the only theory, and if the show was a lot longer, we could talk about multiple theories. But what you've just said there, you thought about it potentially being a time slip. But if you had to kind of put it in stone now, what you actually thought you experienced that day, and how that train has manifested itself as a spirit, shall we say? What would you put it down to?
I kind of feel like it's something that is there for some reason, that it wants someone to witness it. So by me being there and being able to witness it, it was whatever this entity was sort of like, great, this person's actually going to see this, so let's put on the full show.
Yeah.
People who can see spirits, mediums, and people like that, they see them all the time, whereas other people never see them. And I believe it's because if you're open to it and the spirits know that you can see them, they present themselves to you.
Yeah.
Part of me just feels like because I was open to it, it presented itself like to me. I don't know really if it was actually happening then. I've always felt like it was from back in those times. I never really, I've said I considered it, but I don't really think that was happening at that time. I feel like it was a memory from the 1950s, somehow locked in time, and someone else may see exactly the same thing or a slightly different experience, but I wonder if it's constantly repeating. I don't imagine so, because I went there every day. I saw this once. I never saw anything like this again. So I wouldn't believe that it's something that is repeating every day on a loop to that extent, and not something like a time slip where on a different day I would have seen maybe the same train but with different people on it.
Yeah.
It was a one-off experience. And it's beyond me really to think of how it manifested itself. But yeah, things can manifest to make you see it. Like seeing soldiers with a gun, like you see.
Yes. Yeah.
It sort of solidifies what you're seeing, adds to it, and it's strange that these paranormal experiences can present themselves in a way. It knew that I would see the train, so it presented the train.
And do you think, because you said there, it's almost like it showed itself to you because it was great, we want to show him, put on the full show, as you said. Yeah. Do you think by doing more research, do you think there's a deeper meaning to it? And what I mean by this is, we often, not often, but we sometimes hear about, somebody had an experience, a paranormal experience, they did some digging, and they found out that the person or whatever it was they saw had been murdered, and maybe it was an unsolved murder, and maybe the experience that they had was a cry for help. Do you think there's anything in that, almost like it showed itself to you as if to say, look, we're showing you something here, we're showing you for a reason, go away and do some digging, go away and do some research, and it might bring something up for you?
I don't feel it's the same as sort of, as you say, something bad happened in a house and that ghost stays living in that house. I don't feel like it was anything like that, because they didn't try and sort of connect with me. There was no sort of, I don't believe there was a message there, really. No one tried to communicate. They were just chatting amongst themselves. So... Okay. And anyone died or something, and that's why that memory's there.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to get at, really. Like maybe there was a big train crash or a big disaster, and nobody really knows about it, or nobody's really investigated it.
Maybe it was the last ever train to go because they shut down that line.
Yeah. Maybe it was like showing you what they'd achieved or something, or remember us maybe.
Yeah.
Don't forget us.
So he also thinks that I'm supposed to talk about this now.
Yeah, that's the other possibility, isn't it? That it's because obviously I talk a lot about synchronicity and how things happen for a reason, and if you look out for the signs enough, you'll know if you're on the right path or not. And maybe that's the whole point of this. Maybe you were supposed to come on this show. Maybe you're supposed to do whatever it is you're going to do next about this thing, and that gives you a purpose to your life almost. And that's what it was all about.
It could be kicking off lots of other people coming forward as well. Because as I said, I'm a very spiritual person. I feel very much like I'm on a spiritual journey. But I still don't talk to people about this because of the fact it's a ghost train. But maybe other people have had these experiences, and hearing this can make them think, I'm going to open up and talk about this. And by doing the post in this Let's Say group, there's a girl actually who contacted me who I was in school with. She was a year or two below me, and she started listing off all these things that happened to her. And then she was sort of like, well, what happened to you? I don't like talking to people about this because I don't want people to think that I'm a freak.
Yeah.
And I just said, the reason I'm talking to people is because I don't want them to feel like they're a freak. I don't think that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell them my experience, but I didn't sort of start with that. They open up straight away, and then they go, hold on a minute, why am I telling you all of this stuff? It's like they want to get it out. They want someone to talk to about it. Because even, you can't even talk to your partners or husband or wife or anything like that. If they don't believe it, then they're just going to tell you you're being ridiculous, and it's pretty hard to deal with. So, yeah.
It is. And fortunately, your kind of experience is... it wasn't a horrible experience. No, it wasn't nice. It wasn't horrible. It was just an experience. Yeah. But there are people out there that have really nasty experiences. I go back to the interview I did with Dwayne, and they can't tell anybody, and they have to live with this. And we could talk about UFO abductions. We could bring that kind of thing into it, and whether it's real or not, these people are experiencing something, and when they don't have anybody to turn to, that must be horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you've bottled this up for however long, and you've kind of felt the need to get it out there, which is great. But imagine how those people feel that are having not so nice experiences. It must be horrible.
Yeah, definitely. This is probably the purpose of me discussing it, I believe, so other people can feel a bit more comfortable. Because what I've said, talking horses and ghost trains, that's pretty far out. So people may have had experiences that are less weird than this that are now going to be like, well, if he's talked about that, I can talk about ghost sighting. Yeah. And who, maybe you should set up some kind of group. I don't know, a support group or something, and where people can come and talk to you. And maybe I don't know, but I think you're right. I think everything does happen for a reason, and maybe you're only just finding that out. Yeah, and I'm just finding out how many people have had paranormal experiences in Lechlade. It's quite shocking, and all these people are independent. They don't know that I'm talking to, other people. Yeah, and the stories are just all in the same place.
Okay, yeah.
Very interestingly, they're all in this Gassens Road, which was just down the road from me, and. I found out from my dad, who told me about one of his experiences when I told him about the train, that he also had, pretty extreme experience as well. Something that was very much verified as well. So I can go into that. But this house in Lechlade was right next to a massive Anglo-Saxon burial ground.
Wow.
Archaeological site. And before they built houses there, they did loads of research, loads of digging, loads of archaeology. So there's some fields that you just can't build on. And these fields are right where all these people are reporting having different experiences. Yeah. Which I found very exciting, very interesting. And these people have just loved telling me what they've seen, because they haven't really had the opportunity, I guess.
No, they haven't got the platform to
Yeah.
talk about it, really. I mean, that's fascinating. We're going to start winding it down now.
Okay.
Obviously, you're talking about people coming and talking to you, and I want to encourage that. I want to encourage the people that are listening to this show to come to you, to contact you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're happy enough to, or you can either give your details now, or they can come to me and I can send them on to you. But if you're happy to give some kind of contact details now for people to come and talk to you about their experiences, I'm sure that would be great.
Yeah. Just anyone can email me. It's marcusgear@hotmail.co.uk. So that's MARCUS, gear like a car, @hotmail.co.uk.
Great.
Yeah, and I've got so much stuff we could talk about, but
well, we'll get you back on. I'm always getting people back on for a part 2. I love a part 2. Everybody loves a sequel.
Yeah.
And we'll get you back on. I'm interested in this Anglo-Saxon area that you've just mentioned, because I'm also interested in the other people's experiences. And it'd be nice maybe if you could get some people's permission to come on and talk about them.
Yeah,
I think that would be great. Yeah, we'll definitely get you back on. I mean, it's fascinating, a fascinating topic. The ghost train thing just blows my mind, and I'm really happy that you've come on.
Sort of protection almost from spirit guide, and also I've had some synchronicities which are.
Yes. yeah, and I'm with you on that, because I am a big believer in synchronicity. The very reason I'm doing this podcast now is through synchronicity, and I'm a very big believer in that. But honestly, thank you, Marcus, for coming on. I am really honoured that you've kind of chosen this podcast as a platform to tell your experience for the first time publicly. Really, I'm kind of humbled that you think that this was the place to do it. And should I get any feedback or any questions or anything, I'll be sure to send them your way. But it is marcusgear@hotmail.co.uk.
That's right, yeah.
For anybody that wants to go directly to Marcus, I encourage you to do so. Marcus is a lovely guy, and I'm sure he'd be very understanding of whatever experience that you may have. But if you'd like to come through me, I'd be happy to send you on. But thank you, Marcus. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for telling your experiences, and 100% we'll get you on for a second show. So, but yeah, thanks, and take care, Marcus.
Yeah, cheers. Take care of yourself.
See you then. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
So that was the interview there with Marcus. Fascinating discussion, really. It's not very often you hear about people that will see objects, mechanical objects, such as trains and cars, presenting themselves as spirits. And we did get a little bit into why that possibly could be. I'm sure we could have spoke about that for a lot longer. Really, we could have really delved deep into some more theories. If anyone listening has a theory on what it could have been, do let me know. Paranormal Paradigm Podcast @gmail.com. You can reach me through the Facebook page, as a lot of you commonly do, or you can come to me personally on Facebook or kieran.woodhouse@gmail.com. Please do feel free to let me know your thoughts on that. And also, if you guys listening have any experiences, it seems to be a common trend now, and I'm quite happy about it, really, that 3 of the last recent shows have been listeners that have reached out to me to talk about their experiences, and I am more than happy to provide a platform for you guys to come and tell those experiences. We had Dwayne, we had Alex, and now we've had Marcus telling their experiences really for the first time. And who am I to deny them a platform when they feel it is the time to tell their experiences? And also, please, I encourage you to reach out to Marcus, because it seems like he's on a bit of a mission now. And maybe that was the purpose of his experiences, the purpose to have people reach out to him with their experiences and to document them. And I have spoken to him briefly about documenting them and maybe putting them in some kind of a book or some kind of a file, just so the history lives on of these people's experiences. Because maybe that's what it was all about. We talk about synchronicity and things happening for a reason. And maybe that's what it was there. Marcus will be coming on again for another show in the near future. He has a ton of other things to talk about. He did briefly touch on the Anglo-Saxon burial ground area that was near his house as well. A lot of stuff going on around that area. regarding people that have spoken to him about their experiences. They all tie in, and that's interesting. But also his dad. His dad is a spiritual author. He has written books and he's had experiences. And whether we hear those stories through Marcus or whether Marcus's dad decides to come on and tell them himself, I'd be happy for that to happen. So look out for that, because that'll be another fascinating episode with Marcus, and maybe Marcus and his dad as well. So thank you for listening, as always. Episode 30, done and dusted. So I have got a lot of guests. I'm kind of recording all of these podcasts in the space of a week, and I'm going to drop them intermittently over the next few weeks or so. So I've got a bit of a backlog at the moment for once. It's a good place to be, making good use of the lockdown that is going on and on. Talking of that, please don't forget I do have another show, The Collective Conspiracy Show, which airs live on Facebook. We also have channels on BitChute and Brand New Tube. You can head over there and listen or watch. It is a live show. It's a video, so you get to see my face as well as listen to me. So you can head over there and watch that. It does deal with the conspiracy side of things, so if that's not your thing, just stay here with the paranormal things. And thank you very much. And do check out the Festival of the Unexplained that I mentioned at the top of the show. There's a YouTube channel. You can go there. There's loads of famous TV celebs within the paranormal world, if that's your thing. Mediums, psychics, interviews, tarot card readings, loads and loads of different topics covered on the Festival of the Unexplained. So head over there onto YouTube and give that a listen as well. But until next time, until we talk again, take care and look after yourselves.